Okay, welcome everyone to this meeting of full council. This meeting is being live streamed on the council's YouTube channel, so welcome to any members of the public who may be watching remotely. The recording of this meeting will remain online for 4 years, and if you are present and making a representation to the meeting, then you are consenting to this and to the use of the recordings for broadcasting and training purposes. Also wanted to just welcome everyone in the public gallery. As you'll no doubt be aware, there are temporary measures that have been recently come into force to increase security at council meetings. Whilst this is regrettable and the council remains committed to making decisions in open session, it is essential that meetings and the council business can be carried through safely, efficiently and without disruption. So I'm sure it won't come to this, but in the event of any disturbance, then we will have to adjourn the meeting and ask people to be escorted from the chamber so that we can continue with an efficient meeting. Please also be aware that CCTV and audio recording is now in operation and the footage and recordings will be held by the council for 5 months. And finally, please also note that there is no fire alarm test expected, so if an alarm does sound, please make your way to the nearest exit immediately. Okay, so first item on the agenda for today is apologies. So I have apologies noted from councillors Bamford, Barnes, Bassett-Smith, Beale, Clark, Fifield, Oliver, Sankey, Flynn and Joy. And Councillor Holliday may be late, but if she can't make it, then she sends her apologies. Are there any other apologies to note that anyone's aware of? I don't see anyone indicating, so moving on to item 2 then. That's declarations of interest. We have 2 officer declarations regarding item 19. That's from Paul Jones and Claire Hughes. Are there any other declarations that people wish to make? Councillor Horwood.
I have to declare an interest in, I think it's item 13, and it's explained by my entry in the Register of Members' Interests, but I'll be withdrawing from that item.
Okay, if there are no other declarations of interest, item 3 then, that's the minutes of the last meeting. So hopefully everyone's had a read through there. Are there any, anyone want to raise anything regarding those minutes? And if not, we'll do, I assume, on a show of hands, if everyone's happy to approve those as a correct record. Thank you, members, that's unanimous. Okay, moving on now to item 4. So that's communications by the Mayor. Now, I don't normally mention mayoral engagements, as I'm always conscious that we can't mention everything. But I did want to this time briefly mention 2 events on this occasion. The first one was the No Child Left Behind Awards that were held recently, and they were a real credit to everyone involved in organising and hosting the event, as well as all the groups and young people who won awards or were nominated, and frankly everyone else who gives their time to support young people in our town. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. And secondly, it was also a privilege to attend a play held by young people from Ukraine at the Everyman recently as well. This was exploring their experiences of leaving their homes and friends and often family. And this was all the more poignant with it marking the 2nd anniversary of the start of the war. And members will of course be aware of other recent events that have been happening around the world. So I just wanted to mark that as well. Thirdly, just to read out that the following have been put forward to be admitted as honorary freedom of the borough in recognition of appreciation of the eminent services rendered by them. That is the Headquarters Allied Rapid Reaction Corps, or ARC, and the following names have been put forward as honorary freemen, and that is Les Bonney, Chun Kong, and Michael Radcliffe, MBE. So please can I ask members by way of a show of hands to approve that these names be put forward for official nomination at an extraordinary council meeting that will be held in May. I'll just have a show of hands. Thank you, members. That is unanimous. That concludes any announcements I had. So moving on to item 5, and that's communications by the leader.
Thank you, Mayor. You didn't mention your contribution to the No Child Left Behind when you learned to juggle. So, just a few from me. The Housing Services Tenant and Leasehold holder consultation finished on the 11th of February this month, and I'm delighted to report that there has been a response of over 10%. Anything up to 5% is considered good, so over 10% is excellent news. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who responded to that consultation. Planning permission is in for North Place and awaiting validation. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank BBS and Waverley Homes for working collaboratively with us, with this administration, to bring the site forward with much needed housing. Congratulations to all involved in the first phase of the community orchard project that took place at Weavers Field. Some 20 fruit trees planted, over 40 members of the local community attended, and obviously with local residents as well. The trees were a mix of apple, cherry and plum, with a further 10 trees due to be planted next month. The application date has now passed for the Cheltenham Zero Small Business Grant Award Scheme, which has proved to be extremely popular. The assessment process is almost complete, and a wide range of businesses will deliver innovative climate adaptation projects up to the value of 100K, helping to drive us towards our 2020-30 vision as set out in our corporate plan. A recent tour of the MX I had showed me how near to completion this is, with furnishing, carpets and desks all in place. And I was particularly pleased to see that the provision of toilets includes a full changing places facility. All that's needed now, folks, is to keep our fingers crossed for some dry weather to complete the outside and the landscaping, so that it'll be open in spring. The last from me as leader is something that is very close to my heart. As a believer in local government, which I am sure all of you would agree with today, makes a massive difference to the residents that each and every local authority represents across the country. Whilst I feel sure that you would agree with that, some might not agree with some of the things that I'm going to say, but I think we are all local government supporters, just by the very nature that we are councillors. You'll see in the papers from the budget that we will be discussing later that the government settlement was slightly increased. And this was as a result of an additional 600 million of funding released by the Secretary of State, Michael Gove, to the local government sector. It is worth mentioning that of that 600 million, 500 million was top sliced for top-tier authorities. So when you break that down to all of the councils, that's not a huge amount of money that's left to distribute across the sector. Whilst any additional funding is always welcome, the general view was that this was just another sticking plaster to respond to the cries from MPs across party, including from the Conservatives, warning of more councils going bust from over a decade of neglect and chronic underfunding. But what I think the local government sector found particularly galling was that this additional funding came with a condition that every council will have to produce and agree a productivity plan to demonstrate how we are efficient and how we are eliminating wasteful spending, including on programmes such as ED&I. For those, rather than use jargon, I would say equality, diversity and inclusion. As leader, I want to be clear that I and my administration would have welcomed the opportunity to work as a local government sector to underline and demonstrate how hard we work to squeeze every efficiency we can from taxpayers' money to protect our resident services. And our decision on Borough Council, Cheltenham Borough Homes is a recent evidence of doing just that. But when announcements of productivity plans are combined with statements about wasteful spending and backhanded comments about ED&I, this just becomes another example of a party that has resulted to be divisive and populist on their policies by just releasing it through the press, as it seems to be their only strategy. We will bring forward our productivity plan to Council in time for July, but I politely suggest that Mr Gove that he produces one for his own government. Last year, the LGA estimated that councils face a funding gap of £4 billion over the next 2 years. And coincidentally, the House of Commons' own Public Accounts Committee released a report as recently as last December that recommended that government could make £4 billion of savings simply through more effective procurement. That's £4 billion they could save. And there are countless more reports from the same committees highlighting enormous government waste. Imagine the funding that could be released to public services if the government got its own act together. So I'll perhaps finish at that point and leave it to the Secretary of State and his cabinet colleagues to reflect on this fact before they aim further cheap political statements at local government, because across party local government, this is the message that they are saying as well. Thank you, Leader. No, Leader.
No, thank you, Leader. Okay, moving on to item 6 then. That is to receive petitions. I believe we have one, Councillor Harman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. On behalf of Councillor Fifield, not here today, Democratic Services are already in possession of a petition on the potential sale of Idsall car park, which I understand has attracted more than the 750 signatures needed to require a debate. That doesn't take place today, but the debate will take place at a future meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harman. That brings us on to item 7 then, which is public questions. We have 13 public questions. I don't know how many people are here today to ask supplementary questions, but we'll run through the list. What I would say is, well, firstly, welcome to anyone who does have further questions to ask. I would encourage you to take your initial question and response as read, but you're obviously very welcome to ask a further supplementary question relating to the answer given. So question 1 is from Mr. Stephen Thomas. I don't know if Mr. Oh, sorry, someone's just coming now with the microphone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hi, presume you can hear me. My question was answered by the leader, which I presume was Rowena.
Sorry, Mr. Thomas, can we just stop for a moment? I don't think the microphone's picking you up properly. Oh, you can. Oh, sorry, please carry on.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah, okay, great. Yeah, I'm replying in response to the answer that was given by the leader. So I'm speaking today on behalf of the Cheltenham Residents Association, who are very concerned and deeply unhappy about the globalist agendas that Cheltenham Borough Council are implementing without our consent. The megacity between Cheltenham, Gloucester and Tewkesbury is one example of this, where consultation was carried out in 2019 and the public decisively said no. This hasn't hindered the controllers, who are determined to create a huge smart city between Cheltenham, Gloucester and Tewkesbury, and in the process would eradicate the unique and distinctive qualities of each of these regions. The new consultation process that was provided to me on the response today is deliberately convoluted in order to manufacture consent and does not ask the main question that you should be asking the public. Do you want a super city between Cheltenham, Gloucester and Tewkesbury? Net zero will obviously play a big part in this smart city agenda, as you alluded to on your reply, and is another example where the public have no appetite to see our town completely radicalised under the disguise of climate change, the details of which have already been meticulously laid out in advance by Max Wilkinson when he unilaterally declared a climate emergency. Even the IPCC haven't declared a climate...
Mr. Thomas, sorry to interrupt, sorry. With supplementary questions, we do need to keep them brief. I appreciate the context you've given, but could we move on to the supplementary question, please?
Yeah, it's really important that all these points are covered off, so can I politely ask you not to interrupt me again, as it's disrespectful?
Please keep it brief, but go on.
Yeah. So I'm carrying on. G will also be instrumental in building out this smart city agenda, between Cheltenham, Gloucester and Tewkesbury, and is another example of where the public are being given no say in whether they want this technology. A recent petition of mine
Mr. Thomas, I'm very sorry to interrupt you again, but we do need to come to the supplementary question.
Thank
Please.
you. Thank you for interrupting me again. So it's our money that is financing all of this, and we want a forum. We want a forum where we can actively engage, not being subject to censorship by those that have signed up to the.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Councillor Hay.
Mr. Thomas, unfortunately, I missed quite a bit of what you said because you're quite quietly spoken and the microphone, and I didn't catch everything. So you've clearly written down what it is that you wanted to ask and to say and get answers to. So if you could let me have that or let the officers have it, I'd appreciate that, and then I can respond to you in writing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hay. Question 2 then is Mr. Peter Frings. You have Mr. Frings.
Hi there, Peter Frings. This is a supplementary question to question 2. Can I also say it's quite difficult up here to hear you guys as well, so if you could sort of like speak as loudly as you can and tell me if I'm not clear. In response to a supplementary question, in your answer, Councillor, you've quoted a little bit from the Companies Act about the responsibilities of a director, but the full quote in the Companies Act is that a director must act to promote the success of the company for the benefit of its members, i.e. the shareholders. So the idea that a non-exec director representing the council and the airport does not have a responsibility to its shareholders would be a new one for the business world. So can I ask the question in a slightly different way? What meetings have you had or you initiated in the last 6 years of the airport's continuing operational losses to sort of address the failing airport on behalf of, you know, residents who ultimately it's an asset that we own?
Sorry, go ahead, Councillor Hay.
Mr. Frings, I can certainly do that, but I'm afraid what actions I've taken and what I've done to intervene in the last 6 years, I wasn't a party of that, so I can certainly give you the last 3 years when I became shareholder, but I actually, on all honesty, I couldn't tell you verbatim today what it is I did and what meetings I attended and what interventions I've made. So I will have to come back to you to look back and come back to you with that written.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hay. Question 3 is Mr. Frings. Do you have a supplementary to question 3, please? No. Question 4 then is Mr. Philip, is it Angel or Angel, sorry? No, we don't have Mr. Angel here. In that case, question 5 is the same. Question 6 then is Miriam Frings. Miriam, no. That's for 7 as well. So question 8 then, Dr. Diane Cook. No. That takes us on to question 10 then, which is Mr. Gary Clark. No. In that case, question 12, which is Mr. David Redgewell.
Yes,
No. Oh, sorry, yes. Sorry, Mr. Redgewell.
Thank you. So my question is about Royal Wells Coach Station and Bus Station. So my supplement would be, what discussions are taking place with the County Council as the Transport Authority, alluded to in your comments, and the Bus Service Improvement Plan the county has to produce, which is £4.5 million, to upgrade the facilities at Royal Wells, bearing in mind it's an economic generator for Cheltenham and is a major National Express hub still. and the facilities need to be improved. It talks about costing 21k in local council tax, but I suggest it probably brings in a lot more money in economic development to Cheltenham and district. And the other point is that a number of bus services pass the site but don't stop. And we see those bus services then, as Councillor Roger Wyborn says, cluttering across the town and making it very difficult for passengers to get on it. Stops like the stands at Primark, where we have 12 buses and 2 stands. So there needs to be some discussions with the county on Royalwell. But I am concerned, as a Cheltenham ratepayer, it's costing 21k, that's fine, but it doesn't talk about the economic development of this town, or what National Express and the coach services provide, or the coaches provided by Go Ahead provide in terms of economic development.
Okay, thank you, Mr Redwell. Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you for your question, Mr Redwell. I agree, actually. Buses are extremely important. Public transport is extremely important, especially as we want to have a more joined-up way of transporting across this town, but also in other areas. The precise conversations that are going on with county, I wouldn't recall off the hand that I've had any detailed conversations. As you can imagine, it's a different political priority over at the County Council, but one that I know officers do have conversations about. It's a tricky one, because I think there should be a whole review of the whole, more than where the county are going, because it doesn't seem quite joined up. But what I will do is I will go away and have a discussion with the officers and double-check exactly the position of any particular conversation that's gone on, and I'll make sure you get the information directly, if that's okay. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffries. Mr Redwell, do you have a supplementary to question 13?
I am concerned that the allocation of finance for a passenger bus station is not sort of ring-fenced, and in fact the budget goes into some public realm, whereas the Department for Transport would expect ring fencing for the bus infrastructure. That the and it's complicated. You own the site, but the shelters and the infrastructure appear to be owned by the County Council's Transport Authority. But I still would suggest that there should be a ring-fence budget, and the budget should be clear to the travelling public and to the Department for Transport what money is actually being spent on Royal Wells and on bus infrastructure in the town, especially as that's actually in the guidance from the bus service improvement plan, due to be submitted to the government on the 12th of June by the county. I can submit that if necessary to the council.
Thank you, Mr Redwell. Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Mr Redwell. Yeah, that feels more like a county conversation to me, and clearly things like buses, highways, the high street, for instance, they are conversations that are happening at the county and council level. Clearly we engage with them where we can, and if there's any financial request, then that's obviously considered. But I don't think it'd be right for us to ring-fence money into relation to something that we don't actually know what the county's got in mind. So it's a sticky one, and one I'm always uncomfortable with, much like yourself and much like other residents that in the two-tier system, but it is one that's there. So I wouldn't want to ring-fence our budget for what we don't know the county have in mind for, if that makes sense. But we would obviously respond positively if that conversation needed and there was some investment needed. I couldn't tell you what that would be, because I don't know what that figure might be. But we would respond positively where we can. Thank you, Mr Redwell.
Okay, so thank you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Jeffries, microphone. No problem. So firstly, thank you to everyone who's put forward questions today, and thank you for the answers. Moving on to item 8 then, which is members' questions. We have 11 of these. If I can start then with question 1, which is Councillor Baker. Did you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for your response. It's reassuring to know that we are on top of the business rate situation regarding long-term empty commercial properties in the town, which are a blight on our town. It's a shame that we don't have the power that we have with residential properties, whereby we can charge a higher rate on long-term empty commercial properties, which is beyond our scope. But could I ask the member whether he would take this up with our MP to see whether government would review how business rates are calculated on long-term empty properties? Because it's a scandal. I know some properties in Cheltenham empty for 20 years. So if he could perhaps agree to take that up with the government, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Councillor Jeffries.
Yeah, I think it is a problem, Councillor Baker, and I agree that we do need some more reform of the whole business rate system. That particular point being so pertinent, because we do see these long-term empty properties at various points of the town, and they are a blight. So yes, I'm happy to take that up with the MP, although, can I just double check, do you want me to do that now or after the general election?
Question 2, Councillor Harman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank the Cabinet Member for the reply to my question, the closure of Cavendish House. It slightly misses the point, if I might say so. I fully understand the position and know the dynamics of the national high street as well as our own local high street and the promenade. The question is, we could have an interregnum, couldn't we? When the development is going ahead, so the building will be empty for a while, it might need to be redeveloped, so quite a big loss of space in the middle of town. Would you be working, do you envisage working with the local business community to perhaps do other things to bring people into Cheltenham in the intermediate period? Additional markets, other activities, to make sure that we maintain footfall as much as we can in our town centre?
Thank you for your supplementary, Councillor Harman. I think there has been quite a bit of conversation and actually stuff out there in the press, but absolutely there is ongoing discussion with Canada Life that's actually being led by my Cabinet Member for Economic, holds the economic portfolio, but absolutely it's talking about for what we call meanwhile use, so that we're not faced with blank windows that are boarded up for some considerable time. So there is a lot of work, and meetings have already taken place so that, for as short a gap as possible. But it's quite a complicated site, as we all know, because it's all on different levels. But I absolutely know that those conversations are happening.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hay. Councillor Harman again, question 3.
Councillor Horwood, thank you for the reply. With regard to review of the policy on sexual entertainment venues, there is a precedent for this council as a whole having a vote, because I remember supporting an amendment from Councillor Clucas on the very same subject, which would have been to adopt a policy of 0 establishments. So I hope the Cabinet might consider, when the time comes, giving us all a vote, given the relevance of it and the concern expressed to me by a number of members of the public.
Well, I thank Councillor Harman for his supplementary. He's aware, of course, that the ability to ban sexual entertainment venues in a limited period like Race Week, which is when it is an issue for Cheltenham, is, of course, impossible under current law, because we can only decide whether to regulate it or not. We can't actually prevent sexual entertainment venues from popping up during Race Week. And the Licensing Committee's call to date has been that it is better to have regulated rather than unregulated sexual entertainment venues, and that is safer for all concerned, most of all probably the most potentially vulnerable people in all of this, which are the performers, usually women. So having said that, he makes a point about the decision level, and of course, as I said in my initial reply, that's set by the Constitution, which says it's a cabinet vote. We did review the decision level last year, and I have to say my memory was a bit fuzzy, perhaps his was too. I've checked the votes on the 19th of June last year when we changed the decision level to be one at cabinet level, and he supported it. He voted for that decision level, as I did. But of course, it is open to us to review that decision in future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Horwood. We'll step over question 4. So number 5 is Councillor Baker.
Councillor Horwood, thank you very much for that response. It's great to see we've issued 70 fines for dropping litter in our town. Litter is such a blight, and as hard as we work to pick it up, more people drop it again. Perhaps we should be grateful for them to drop it so that we've got a job to go and pick it up. But of course that isn't the point. We have so many volunteer groups picking up litter as well as our officers. So it's great that the fines are in place. I think also pleased that you're going to undertake a bit of a PR campaign about this to raise the profile of the fact that the fines have gone up. And I think some signage in our town would be good. and even a naming and shaming programme where people who drop litter and are fined or prosecuted are named and shamed. It's about time that these people who do this realise there's a consequence to their actions. Thank you.
I think Councillor Baker makes very good points indeed. We can and do use the maximum fine level available to us from government. We can and do deploy mobile CCTV on hotspots to identify litter and fly tipping offenders. As I said in my initial answer, we are looking at the priorities of the neighbourhood team as part of the overall sort of council restructuring, and it's very clear that littering and fly tipping will be a priority going forward. And we can and do issue fixed penalty notices, as he's said, more than 30 for littering, more than 40 for fly tipping, raising more than £10,000 in fines since 2021, and with 4 prosecutions. He makes the point that awareness of this may not be as high as it should be, and I did notice that one Alex Chalk recently issued a leaflet where he didn't seem to be aware that we were using the maximum powers available to the council already. So I think he makes a good point about that, and I think a high-profile campaign on this later this year would be something the cabinets can certainly discuss, and I think he makes very good points in relation to that. Litter and fly tipping are a menace. They're something that volunteer groups, and I mentioned the tremendous Councillor Kit Brownholtz in Leckhampton, who I will mention again, over 90 and leading litter picks in Leckhampton, tremendous individual. But there are many other litter picks that people lead on a voluntary basis. But the council is doing its bit, and we need to perhaps raise the profile of that work a bit more, exactly as he suggests, and we're happy to look at that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Horwood. Question 6 then is Councillor Nelson. Do you have a supplement?
Thank you, Mayor. No, I don't have any supplementaries to any of my questions. I thank all the Cabinet members for their answers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Nelson. That therefore concludes members' questions. Again, thank you, members, for the questions and for the answers given. That brings us then to item 9, which is the final general revenue and capital budget proposals 2024-25 and the quarterly budget monitoring report, and that's for October to December 2023. Before we go into this item, I just remind members you should have a budget process flow chart. It's slightly different to the usual process for decisions made at council. So please do have a look through and familiarise yourselves with that. In particular, I'm going to propose that we suspend, as is normal for the budget debate, the following rules. The first one being that the time limit on speeches is relaxed for the Cabinet Member for Finance when moving the motion, for group leaders when making a budget statement on behalf of their group, and then to permit the Cabinet Member for Finance and any group leaders to speak more than once in debate for the purpose of putting and answering questions. So with that, I'd like to invite the Cabinet Member for Finance and Assets, Councillor Jeffries, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Colleagues, I have the privilege of presenting the General Fund Revenue and Capital Final Budget proposals for 2024-2025. Yet another 12 months in finance has been quite turbulent. Dealing with continued economic uncertainty and instability is extremely challenging. However, this budget is driven by supporting our residents, investing in our town and putting Cheltenham first. Our operating environment as it stands, the Bank of England base rate is at 5.25%, inflation is hovering around 4%, underlying price inflation sits at around 16%. But food inflation for the 2-year period between 2021 and 2023 was around 28%, and now our economy is officially in recession. The cost of living crisis seems to have taken a firm hold. Sadly, it's not just this crisis that has a direct or indirect impact on our budget. Nationally and locally, there are an increasing number of severe challenges, of which they're all interconnected. We have or continue to have a housing crisis, a climate crisis. The NHS and social care systems are broken and in crisis. The education system and police service are struggling, some say in crisis. They also seem to be carrying the burden of the growing mental health crisis. Let's not forget the ecological crisis. Effluent poisoning our rivers and beaches on what seems like a daily basis. And if that wasn't shocking enough, we have a poverty crisis. where nearly 2.5 million people are using food banks just to survive. I probably missed a crisis or two, as there's so many to mention, but here are a couple that bring me back on track in terms of finance. The national debt. Depending on which section of government debt you add up, or which data sheet from the Office of National Statistics you use, this is running at nearly 100% of GDP. Absolutely staggering, really. Especially when you consider that during 2022-2023, the current government spent somewhere near £108 billion servicing that debt. That was what it spent on education, or more than what it spent on education that year. And don't get me started on the amount of waste and fraud identified by the Parliamentary Accounts Committee. Over £100 billion and climbing, and that's when I stopped. And that's when, that's what I did so far, and that's when I stopped. Now, I'm no economist, but it's clear to me that the current government has been randomly throwing our money around, but not on our public services. Mind-boggling, really. Some may say this is we can no longer afford the Conservative crisis. Moving on to the challenge with our budget, which our budget is facing, the local authority funding crisis. Now, I'm a bricklayer builder by trade. My expertise is in construction and maintenance, and working on the budget process over the last few years has been so hard because of the decisions made by this current government. I can only liken it to being sent off to work by the site manager with a set of plans, only to find out he's taken my tools away. Then he changes the plans, takes away the cement mixer. I find out the bricks are all cracked, then he changes the plans and tells me to get on with it. Oh, and by the way, I'm docking your wages for wasting time. For over a decade now, local authorities have been under an unprecedented level of sustained funding pressure. Government funding has reduced drastically, somewhere around 50%. We've seen well below inflation rise in council tax and commercial-driven revenue savagely affected by this government's disastrous mini-budget and cavalier economics. Don't just take my word for this. I've taken an extract from the Local Government Association National Budget Submission to Government. Very short extract. The fundamental challenge is that cost and demand pressures are rising faster than funding. Our analysis shows that by 2024-2025, cost and pressures will have added £15 billion, that's 28.6%, to the cost of delivering council services. For me, that's shocking. And what's shocking about this is those cost pressures have only really appeared in the last few years, or in Conservative Party terms, 3 Prime Ministers. Sorry, never get old, that one. At the last count, 8 authorities have issued 114 notices. They can't balance their budget and they face possible bankruptcy. Also, a recent Local Government Association survey showed some worrying results. 1 in 5 authorities are very or fairly likely to issue a 114 notice this year or next. So it's fair to say that financial resilience in the sector is an all-time low. That is the legacy of the political choices of this current Conservative government. It's clear there is a local authority funding crisis. What is perplexing for me, and adds insult to injury as they say, is they're often told by our Conservative MP that Cheltenham gets a good deal. I disagree. This council, the only district council serving his constituency, delivers vital services and support to vulnerable residents. Yet in a league table of government funding, we are the 19th worst funded council in the country. That's a damning indictment of a deal that this town gets from his government. Our town is not immune from the impact of these Conservative government-driven funding pressures, and this council's financial resilience has been tested. We've innovated, changed the shape and structure of the council and how it operates and delivers services over the years. We continue to find efficiencies, savings, and additional income, and this budget is no different. We continue to bridge the funding gap, but this takes time and resources and no small effort from Cabinet colleagues and officers across the council, but we will continue this journey again this year. It's important to recognise why this strategy is the right approach. It enables this council to continue delivering services, support our residents, invest in our town, and put Cheltenham first. Keeping our services running efficiently and effectively, licensing, planning, environmental health, business rates processing, to name a few. These are some of the functions that support businesses, our local daytime and nighttime economy, and our residents. We continue direct grant funding support for our leisure and culture sector, whilst also working collaboratively and in partnership. This vibrant and much-loved sector not only underpins economic activity in the town, but it is part of what our town is unique for, or known for, and is unique. Loved by residents and visitors equally. Supporting our most vulnerable residents with our council tax discount support scheme, benefit and money advice measures, or working collaboratively with Cheltenham's Food Network and Feed Cheltenham. Also supporting our voluntary and community sector organisations who rent or lease council properties through the third sector rent support policy. Let's not forget our Parks and Gardens team. They're working hard to reduce CO2 emissions whilst promoting biodiversity in the way we manage our town's green spaces. For example, they've replaced petrol vehicles with electric ones. They're also continuing to plant much more insect-friendly perennials. Meanwhile, the Council continues to be at the forefront of recycling nationally, notably in the range of recyclables collected at the curbside. We remain in the one and only district council in the country. I've got to say that again, actually, because given where the funding pressures are, I've got to say it again, because this one gets me. We remain the one and only district council in the country to offer the convenience to its residents of a town household recycling centre. We make it easy to recycle. This budget underpins our statutory services, but mixed in there are also examples of discretionary spending. Hundreds of thousands of pounds of indirect and direct funding support. Got the pages mixed up then, that would have been a disaster, wouldn't it? And all the prep I've done as well. The strategy I've mentioned is clear. It aims to balance this council's financial sustainability whilst investing for the future, putting Cheltenham first. The future is continuing our housing investment programme. We all understand the value of homes which are safe, secure, good quality, but we need more affordable homes across the town. The future needs to be net zero. That's why we've taken decisive action to combat the climate crisis by investing in our communities. We have successfully launched the Green Deal scheme, which has led to the installation of Cheltenham's largest solar array. Community organisations and small businesses are benefiting from retrofit grants. We are currently preparing to retrofit our leisure centre, ensuring that it remains open for the enjoyment of residents, despite the soaring fuel bills. Plus, we're also launching a new cycle hub in the town centre. Delivering Golden Valley. This key investment by the council not only plays a role in our financial sustainability, it also enables economic growth. And so much more. New homes, new businesses, new jobs, a whole range of unique opportunities. It'll help raise the ambitions of our young people, securing their future. With the planning application submitted for the Innovation Centre, Mobility Hub and Housing, we're one step further along on that journey. This is investing in our town, securing the future, putting Cheltenham first. Sadly, however, the future is not bright for some in our town. Growing inequality in our society is reflected in the levels of poverty that exists. Nearly 4,500 children and young people in our town are living in poverty. Now, we want to change this, don't we? Clearly, I don't know anybody in this chamber who wouldn't want to change this. Now, whilst we can't solve the poverty crisis for those children, the No Child Left Behind initiative is vital. This initiative has touched the lives of over 7,000 children across the town in recent times. Simplistically, it connects people, businesses and organisations that care, and in doing so, gives opportunity and hope for those children. And that's priceless in my view. Our 2024-25 budget continues to navigate through the economic turmoil and financial uncertainty that this current version of a Conservative government seems oblivious to. This Liberal Democrat administration's political choices are clear. They run through the DNA of these budget papers. Our priorities are supporting our residents, investing in our town, putting Cheltenham first. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll have to take any questions, but my Cabinet colleagues are on hand for any detailed ones, and so are officers.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jeffries. Sorry, to the microphone, please. Thank you. Okay, so I'm now looking for a seconder for the motion. Sorry, Councillor Hay. Did you want to speak now or reserve your right to speak later on?
I'll reserve, please.
Okay, thank you. In that case, we'll move on to questions. Do we have any questions on the budget? Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mayor. And I rise as a democratically elected representative of Charlton Park Ward, Cheltenham, and I stand to speak in the council chamber here, which is the democratically elected place for these discussions. If anybody wants to join in, they can put their name forward on the 2nd of May. Thank you, Councillor Jeffries, once again for your budget. And thanks again also to the financial team behind you, because I spent 5 years on the Audit, Compliance and Governance Committee, the last 3 years of which as chair. And I know what work goes on to keeping this sublime swan that is Cheltenham Borough Council paddling along when, as you eloquently said in your builders analogies about what the government does in terms of changing the goalposts, You've had to react as a team, and I say as a team because you're the cabinet lead for this, and we thank you for it. But there is a team led by Paul and by Gemma that work tirelessly, often beyond the hours that we pay them to do, to get this done for us. So I thank them. I'd like to record my thanks here. We spoke at length the other night to my former chair of Audit, Compliance and Governance, and I promised you I would write a question down for brevity purposes. And for Democratic Services, I will email you the question I have. I think we might have covered it, but I'm just trying to understand what I took out of what we were talking about the other night. So last year's budget report to Council in February of last year advised that the general fund balance would be maintained at near about 1.5 million. And the Council's revenue budget for 23-24 was set accordingly. It's now predicted that this original budget will be overspent by approximately 700,000, and this overspent mostly being due to much higher than anticipated borrowing costs following the government's disastrous mini-budget. Yeah, I can account to that because our mortgage went up by £900 a month, thank you very much, mistrust. So not as any management failings of this council, and I stress that. So this overspend could see the general fund balance fall to below 1 million. Could you, Councillor Jeffries, please indicate what steps have been taken by you and your team to deal with this problem and ensure that the general fund balance carried forward into 24-25 is maintained at a healthy level? Because I think you reassured me, but I had a long day, and I'd just like some reassurance today, please, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Jeffries. Just before we do, can I just remind members this is questions. We are moving on to debate shortly, but thank you for your context, I believe, is the Councillor Jeffries.
Yes, I was hoping to give you the reassurance when we spoke. The overspend and the overspend the year previously obviously does stretch our budgets, and this is where the reserves and general balances were coming into play. I think on Appendix 7, for those members as well who've got their papers handy, there is actually £629,942, and I found it first time. I'm so pleased with myself. That's actually planned in year to go back into general balances. It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because we can't just squirrel away money because we want to squirrel away money. We've got to take a prudent approach, no doubt. It's also covered in the S25 report, I think, the 151 officers report in terms of how we approach those general balances and how robust they are. I think the phrase is a risk-based approach. So we have a plan to replenish those balances. It's all part of the savings strategy. Equally, it's part of why we take some of the tough decisions we do around bringing our housing services back into house, which we've taken recently. So, yes, there is a plan. Yes, there's a budget figure in there. But who knows what the next 12 months holds and where we may or may not get a shock again and where those balances may not change. Thank you,
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Councillor Tuck, can you just turn off your microphone? Sorry. Sorry, thank you, Councillor Jeffries. I've got Councillor Telford next.
Thank you. In light of Alex Chalk MP's recent leaflet delivered across the town claiming that the economy is growing and the simultaneous news that we'd actually entered a technical recession, can I just ask where the council gets its data from for the economy for the budget? I just think it would be prudent to ensure that we're using the most accurate data available to protect council income and residents' council tax. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Telford. Yeah, interesting that one. It threw me a bit when I saw that. I must admit, I'm not quite sure where Mr. Chalk gets his information from, but he is a member of the government, and that is where we do head, unfortunately, some of our information. We get out from the DLUHC, the Department for Levelling Up and Housing Communities. There's obviously a range of information we get from them, the ONS, obviously National Statistics, obviously the Bank of England. We've also got a range of outside organisations, professional organisations we take information from. Pixel Financial Management, Arlene Close, their Treasury Advisors, PS Tax, their public sector tax experts, effectively, and obviously our auditors and so forth. So, yeah, we take all of our information, add it together with Paul's decades of experience and knowledge, and other officers that have equally got the same amount of decades of experience and knowledge when you add them all up, and we come out with our budget. So I would advise Mr. Chalk to consult the relevant budget department or relevant government department to get his information next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffries. Councillor Harman next.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will only ask questions. Two of them, in fact. One, and they will be constructive. One with regard, wearing my sort of other hat as chairman of the Budget Scrutiny Group, a task I took over from Councillor Babbage before he was elevated to his current status. An issue we raised there was looking at some of the figures where we were assumed additional income. From memory, 100,000 on the MX and 50,000 on EV charging points. I think from memory again, that was sort of half a year's income, given we can't be absolutely sure when those things will happen. Now, there are uncertainties. Can you tell me if you are confident in delivering those savings? Can I ask my second question at the same time? I'll sit down. The second thing is, again, on the subject of EV charging points, I'm advised that the County Council has offered to all 6 district councils the opportunity to join in their bid with the contractor to install EV points, which would mean you get them at a cheaper rate, I guess, if you on scale. Are you aware of that, and will you be taking advantage of it? I did notice this morning that the EV points in Montpellier on Street are now operational. Thank you.
Am I confident about the revenue or additional income savings? As confident as I can be based on the data analysis we've done, but clearly anything external, it may change that. So in recent years, my confidence has waned somewhat in some of the areas where there have been some slippage. Hopefully there won't be slippage, but I can't predict personally what the next 12 months is going to hold external to our assessments. In relation to EV charging points, yes, we were aware of the County Council's drive to put EV charging points in. They plonked them in my road, actually. There's some nice conversations about it. I'm not quite sure residents are actually going to use them, but they plonked them all over the place. We did have some conversation about it. It doesn't necessarily work for us because we're taking a different model in how we approach it with the EV end supplier. So we were aware of it, but thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jeffries. Councillor Tuck.
Perhaps because there are elections coming up, and perhaps because... Is my microphone working? Yeah. Perhaps because councils are going bust, including Tory councils. The government has made a very big fuss about the 600 million boost, 500 million of which is going on social care. My question to Councillor Jeffries is, how big a deal is the government's contribution to local finance? So perhaps, you know, we were looking at spend per household. What proportion of that is coming from central government? What proportion of it is coming from elsewhere, and how is the gap made up?
It's funny, I was doing some work on this not so long ago, so it's, I took some notes as well. So the council plans to spend about £1,395 per household on services, you know, for all residents and so forth, and customers and visitors. So that's our spend per household. Using the government guaranteed funding of about £4.6 million that's been allocated to us, that equates to about £104 per household. So we're funding £1,291, they're doing £104. About 7.5% of our funding comes from central government that's spent per household. I think those facts and that evidence clearly speaks for quite a lot, quite volumes really, especially when you work out that the additional money they gave us in this big grand announcement to save local authorities worked out to be about around £3.50 per household. So that gives you some sort of context. Thank you, Councillor Turk.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jeffries. Sorry, microphone again. Sorry, thank you. I don't see any other members indicating questions to the Cabinet member. We do have the opportunity at this point to ask questions of the Section 151 officer as well regarding the Section 25 report. That's Appendix 2. I don't know if members are necessarily aware of that, so if you don't have questions at this point, I'm happy to take questions during the debate or something in a minute, but just to make you aware of that. The next section here then is to move on to statements by the group leaders. And so I'd like to invite Councillor Harman to make a statement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's me again. I'll be fairly brief, but I hope constructive. You wouldn't know there were elections coming, would you, from this afternoon, really? But anyway, I'll just move. I'll park that. I won't go there. I'll just say a few things. We understand the pressures on all local government. You can't deny it. I mean, nobody is denying it. Those pressures, I think, have been intensified by a number of international situations. I'm wearing today the Ukrainian emblem, which I'm very proud to do 2 years on from the invasion. Quite clearly, the shockwave that was sent through all economies, not just ours, you know, from the change in energy pricing, has had a terrible effect for lots of people. It's made life a lot tougher, and we're not blind to that. I've been involved with local government, with this council's officer for 25 years, and as a member now for 12. I've never known a time when councils didn't criticise the government of the day for not giving them enough. Doesn't matter whether they're Labour, Conservative or Coalition. It's always been the case, so I have to say that in general terms. I'll come on in a moment to talk, when I get the chance, of our modest amendments, which we don't move now. I think that's the next stage after the other leaders have spoken, which will be modest, because we understand the need, I think, to recognise the real-world situation, which we do. We very much do. I would also like to add my thanks to Paul and Gemma and John for the contribution they made to preparing these budgets. And certainly at that budget scrutiny group I was pleased to share, you know, their help was invaluable. We know the challenges. We can't, however, ignore the fact that quite separately to this budget, there has been massive investment in Cheltenham coming from this government, including, for example, the cyber park, I think another 20 million recently. Now, it isn't quite in our budget, but it is for our town, and it's very important. So I think to sort of say you're being starved of funds is a little bit unrealistic, Councillor Jeffries. However, nonetheless, let's stick to the case in hand. You mentioned, Councillor Tuck mentions the additional funds that have come into local government. Very welcome money on social care, wearing my county council's hat, and Stefan isn't here today, but he's obviously the cabinet member, and that has been extremely well recognised. Now, yes, we'd all like more money. Of course we would like more money. It puts a greater emphasis on all of us to use our money sensibly. And I can't go along with a blind criticism of Michael Gove, because I'm afraid there are many councils that are not very good at what they do. I'm not saying you're one of them, because in many ways I'm a great fan of this council. We have a better team working ethic across this council than I've seen in many others, so I'll say that up front. But I'll just conclude my comments saying that when we come on to the modest amendments, which will be familiar to a number of you, but we do so because we think it's right. And the leader said earlier on, she's still at the back now, the leader said earlier on, and I would commend her for some of the things she said, but I'd also point out, if I can, you mentioned efficiency, looking after every penny. Well, our amendments will help you to use the money more sensibly for the things of the people of Cheltenham really want, like cleaner streets and more opportunities to recycle. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Harman. I don't think you'll be sitting down for too long, because the next item, I don't believe there are any other group leader statements. So the next item is for groups to formally move. Sorry, Councillor Jeffries.
Is there no group? Did you say there's no other group statements from any other group party? Because I can't see any councillors from the Green Party here, so I thought we may have submitted a statement, such as point of clarification.
Thank you for the clarification. Now we move on to formally moving any amendments. So I'll start with the Conservative group. Councillor Harman again.
I think we may have something on the screen possibly, but they've been circulated around to group leaders well within time. Again, I thank Gemma and Paul for their input, and John to make sure that the figures stack up, etc. And they might get there somewhere soon. I think I'll talk you through them. I'll talk you through them if they're not. Here we go. Right. Brilliant. Now, we've done this before. We believe that we could have a smaller cabinet. That doesn't mean to say I don't think you work hard, but we've got a county council with, I think Emma would remind me, 9 cabinet members with a budget of 616 million. So I think we could manage with 2 less, and that would save 37,000, and we would stick with whole council elections. Now, in the past, many years, you've had retirement half the council at a time. This time, because of boundary changes, the whole council up for election. We're still busy recruiting candidates to fill all 40 of those vacancies. So if you've done that now, I think we stick to it, and we don't, again, confuse the people of Cheltenham. Because if you don't do that, quite apart from the fact you save money and you can spend it on things that I'm sure people in the town want, You're going to be overworking the election staff when you don't need to. As things would stand, you've got the borough elections this May, probably general election before the end of the year, county council elections next year. You drag people out to vote again in 2026 for half the council here, and so on and so on. Now, I'm sure any moment now when I finish, Councillor Willingham is going to stand up and say, or a list of all these councils from across who do things different. They do thirds and halves. But the fact does remain, in Gloucestershire, Cheltenham is the only one that wishes to do it this way. And bear in mind that 2 of the other districts who have whole council elections are now Liberal Democrat-led, Tewkesbury and Cotswold. So I don't think they have any plans to change it. So perhaps you need to speak to them to persuade them that they're wrong and you're right. So quite simply, now what will we do with the money? Obviously, we'd like to spend a lot more on these things, and the savings are modest. We're not rewriting your budget. Many things in it we think are splendid, no problem. But we think our duty and our responsibility is to speak truth unto power. And I know when I go around my ward, I was meeting some residents this morning on another topic, and they said to me, pardon my expression, I won't use the word that was used, begins with B, the streets are filthy. And I think we have definitely slipped back. I'd like to see Cheltenham a better place. So one of our savings there is to do a little bit more street sweeping, which I think could be done. Now, I'm told that's 0.8% of an operative. But that does mean 4 days a week extra sweeping. And probably the longer look at it, we could tweak resources more to do even more than that. The other thing is the Swindon Road Recycling Centre. Now, we opposed this when you proposed it. Closes now on a Wednesday. I do know from personal experience of residents that have told me that they go down there and they're frustrated. I think we need to send a very clear signal we are serious about recycling. It's only a small measure. I believe it's doable. You only save 35 grand by closing it. And I think, I have no statistics on fly tipping, but I'm sure some frustration may come in. So that's something we would do. Mr. Mayor and fellow colleagues, those are our amendments. We commend them to the House, and I hope that you might feel it in your water to at least consider it sensibly and not just dismiss it as you've done before. I don't want to get repetitive strain injury, because we seem to have done this for several years, but we think it's better for Cheltenham. That's why we are elected. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Harman. Do we have a seconder for the Councillor Nelson? Did you want to speak now or reserve your right to speak at the end of this item? Okay, thank you. Okay, members, I don't believe there are any other, sorry, I shouldn't jump ahead. I don't believe there are any other amendments that people want to, table at the moment. Councillor Jeffries, do you want to come in?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I may be jumping the gun a little bit, but you're about to say, do you want to take the 20-minute recess at this point? Just for clarity, I'm quite happy to deal with this now if you're so minded, on behalf of this group. Well,
sorry, 1 second. Sorry, I should just check that nobody else wants to have an adjournment at this stage. Any of the other groups at all? No. No? In that case, Councillor Jeffries, please carry on.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Harman, for the amendment. Well, if we had a little bit of notice this time to have a brief discussion about it, I really do appreciate that. Sadly, I was disappointed when I read the amendment, as you can imagine. I think the journey for the amendment started in about 2018, I think, for the one section of all of elections, and then it was added to in 2020 with the reduction of the cabinet size. Yeah, I'll just check my notes. That's definitely right. Now, I'm not quite sure. I mean, I'm not going to support the amendment at all, and I don't think our group's going to support the amendment because it's just not going to happen. This council, I think, as you know, has changed shape, size. I mentioned it in my budget speech, and there's so much more we do as a council now. In fact, the exact reason why the cabinet was expanded was because of the 2 key priorities. And you actually mentioned in your speech that we should be grateful for £20 million from the government. Well, I try to be as delicate as I can with you, Councillor Harman. I've got some respect for you. That's a piece of national infrastructure actually the government should be paying for, but this town is paying for, and we're funding to the tune of £140, £150 million. So I welcome the money from government. That's a capital spend, not our revenue budget. So there's a lot of work for this cabinet to do, and they do it very effectively, so I don't think reducing the size of it will wash. And as for council reducing, well, changing our election system, it works for Cheltenham. And the reason it works for Cheltenham is because it gives our residents a democratic voice regularly. Right now, the country, as far as I can see, is hanging on every bit of media knowledge for that. When's the general election coming? That's the whole debate. And that's going to go on until potentially January the 5th, I think it is. So 2-year elections, keep that nicely in check so I can see and give our residents a voice. When it comes to the actual spending of the money, I'm sorry, I did make a point in my budget speech of mentioning the fact that that's the only district authority running a recycling centre, household recycling waste. So I can't, my mind boggles. So extending those opening hours would be absolutely crazy. You know, what are we going to sacrifice? A cabinet member so we can open up the HRC for 2 or more hours? No, not going to happen. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. And as for street cleaning, well, I don't know, go back to recycling for a second. We actually recycle more in this town. We've got record recycling numbers at the moment, record recycling numbers. And as I also, my cabinet colleague will no doubt attest to, the amount of things you can recycle at the doorstep without having to drive anywhere, okay, is growing. So, no. And as for street cleaning, I could take some criticism that the streets aren't necessarily up to the best scratch. Yes, I can take that. But you're talking about £22,700, or as you put it, 0.8% of somebody, on what is effectively a £1.4 million budget out of an £11 million contract. It's negligible. But actually in the budget paper, if you read, there is a review of the UCO contract, and I'll feed those thoughts back into it. But this group will reject the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jeffries. We are now debating the amendment as put. Do we have any other speakers on the amendment? If not, then I'll move to the seconder of the amendment. Councillor Nelson, did you wish to speak on this item?
Just very briefly, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to support our motion to change these 2 items in the budget. On the cycles of elections, the 2-year thing, I think there's an opportunity missed with the going to 4 years, because as a councillor, you get to know the officers, you become more efficient. So if you're thrown out after 2 years, you've then got to retrain someone else all the time. So that's a hidden cost and an efficiency. Sorry.
Sorry, members, can I just... when we had a point of order earlier, I let it go, because even though it wasn't a point of order, as long as it is a point of clarification that is clearing up a misunderstanding of what somebody else has already said, then carry on.
Councillor Nelson, you said that when members are elected, they may get elected after 2 years, so if you're leading to a 4-year cycle. Well, actually, all members are elected for 4 years. The fact the elections run in 2-year cycles. So I just want to clarify you at the point you were making.
So are you saying we won't have an election in 2 years' time? Yeah. So therefore, whoever's elected in May will only do 2 years. Yeah, one of those people. They'll only do 2 years, so you lose the efficiency.
Sorry,
I
sorry,
still
members,
believe
this
there is
isn't,
an efficiency. Anyway, I will second.
We shouldn't be
this
getting into question and answers amongst ourselves, but Councillor Nelson, please carry on with your...
Well, that was my observation, is that there's an efficiency side to that, not just a monetary one. And I think the street cleaning is a desperate need. We need another machine out there cleaning the sides of the roads. They're a disgrace. So I would happily second this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Now, I believe, is it Councillor Harman has the right as the proposer of the motion, the amendment, to make a further statement if he wishes.
I'll do so briefly. I thank Councillor Nelson for her support. I don't know. I mean, I suppose it's every year I bang my head against a brick wall and hope I don't get a headache. But we've been saying it for several years because we actually believe it. We think it's right. We think it would be more efficient. I also think that, frankly, the electorate are confused. Quite apart from that, they don't understand what the county does and what the borough does, and we never explain it to them. I also think we're in danger of actually seriously depressing the turnout of elections, because people will think, here we go again. Was that lady in Bristol? What was her name, Brenda? Another one. So, I don't know. We stick to our principles. You're probably going to shoot it down. We're here to improve the lot of people in Cheltenham and do what we can within a very limited envelope of opportunity to make Cheltenham just that little bit more efficient and a little bit more cleaner.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Harman. Now, as mover of the original motion, Councillor Jeffries, did you want to say anything further on this amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I reject the amendment.
In that case, members, we'll move to the vote. So this is on the amendment, as on the screen. Please vote using the pads in front.
My finger slipped.
Okay, members, thank you for that. So that was the amendment is not passed. There were 4 votes in favour, 24 against, and 1 abstention. In that case, we now move back to the main item on the budget. So we've had questions. We now move on to the debate around the budget. Do we have any members looking to make any statements on the budget? No? Oh, sorry, Councillor Horwood.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to, welcome the budget that's been presented to us. Part of my portfolio is planning, and I am really delighted, given how many councils around the country are in states of crisis and cutting back on frontline services, reducing staff numbers, that we are currently, from the planning team, recruiting 2 new conservation officers to continue the work of trying to balance our exceptional architectural heritage and protect that exceptional architectural heritage in this town with contemporary demands like the demands for climate change mitigation. That we are also recruiting a brand new post of senior enforcement officer, which will help to clear the backlog of enforcement that we inherited from the COVID pandemic and help to build confidence in the planning system locally. And we're recruiting another new post, which I'm particularly proud of, which is Borough Ecologist, which will help us to deliver, I hope, even more than the government's 10% target of biodiversity net gain, and provide a really important expert resource for the whole council in terms of delivering on nature recovery and tackling the nature emergency in this country. And the fact that we are in a position to have those new recruitments going ahead, and we have that confidence in our forward budget, is down to the good financial management of this council and the work, of Councillor Jeffries, certainly, and the finance team and Paul Jones, but also of his various Lib Dem predecessors, including Councillor Hay, actually, when she held that portfolio. And I think it's a legacy of great work that has put this council, relative to other councils, in a very strong position, and I'd certainly be supporting this budget.
Thank you, Councillor Horwood. Councillor Atherstone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'd just like to point out that it's really, really great that we're able to continue our investment into the private rented sector over the next couple of years, providing homes for those that are in need of affordable home and also great landlord. So I'm really, really pleased that that has been budgeted for.
Thank you for that, Councillor Clucas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, I'd like to say something which I hope colleagues won't mind me saying, and it's this. Mr. Mayor, you were at the No Child Left Behind awards ceremony, and you will have seen the faces of those children, the representatives of those organisations. You will have seen the representatives of the council and of business in our town. You will have seen the faces. You will have understood what we were about. And I have to say, when I saw the faces of those children looking at you, seeking to make an animal out of balloons and enabling all of them to have a really good time. I thought it was fabulous. And I just want to say thank you for that, because being mayor quite often can make you look and feel, well, out of it. But actually, in this town, I look at the people who've been mayor, including you, including Bernie, including you, Steve, and all of you who have been mayor. And what I see is people who want to have an investment in our town. And that's not just an investment in terms of them being the biggie, but of them being part of the community. And that's what No Child Left Behind does. It creates a community where children feel a part of who we are and what we do, where they feel valued, appreciated, where they can look at someone like the leader of the council sitting at the next table and saying, look who that is, or look who that is, and suddenly they feel part of something unique, something different. And that's why, Councillor Jeffries, I am so pleased that you mentioned No Child Left Behind, because 7,000 children, just think of that, ladies and gentlemen, 7,000 children and their families who have been helped. And I think to myself, how is it happening in other areas? And I can tell you it isn't. It isn't. And that's because in this town, we have a budget that is stable, doesn't look at the short term, doesn't look at the quick fix, doesn't look at how we can make things best for us, but actually how we can make things best for our people, for our children, for our businesses, for our organisations, for our town's growth. And my goodness, what a difference that makes to our potential and our future. And No Child Left Behind is just one part of this. But I want to say thank you to all of you for your support for it, because it is quite astonishing that we can do this. But it would not be possible without the commitment of our officers, the commitment of our leadership, the commitment of our town, its businesses, of organisations like Punchline who decide to bring business funding into it. It wouldn't be possible. So I want to thank all of you and say, I'm voting for your budget, Peter, because I think it's a damn good budget. It helps No Child Left Behind, but it does more. Because in looking at the future, in looking at how Golden Valley is going to change the future of this town, what you're going to do is provide apprenticeships for young people, is provide opportunity for new jobs, opportunities for new homes. And I think I want that. And I'm sure the people I represent want it, and I'm sure the people of our town want it. So thank you. And let's vote for this, guys. Let's make it happen, eh?
Thank you, Councillor Clucas. Councillor Baker, up you next.
Irrespective of political parties, we all put our names forward to become councillors for our town because we want the best for our town, undoubtedly, whatever our political persuasion. And I am incredibly frustrated year on year on year that I can't do more for my town because of the constraints and reductions of government funding, because our hands are tied in terms of the council tax and what we're allowed to do with that. Not saying we should put it up more, but it would be good to have the flexibility, as any business has, to deal with and look at its pricing. We don't have that. And that is hugely frustrating. And I can't imagine being an officer and working for a local authority and trying to understand how frustrating it must be. Because you wouldn't run a business like you run a local council. The council here, we don't know what funding we're going to get next year. So you're making decisions blind. And then you get last-minute announcements. What a way to run a country, to run a local authority, to run our town. It's a joke. So I want to say a huge thank you, not just to our finance team here, but all local authority staff across the country, across the county, across our borough, who do a remarkable job in very, very challenging circumstances. and whether it's the people working in our parks or cleaning our streets or doing work in the finance team, particularly the planning team, who I am very close to. You know, they're often on the end of very difficult conversations with people who don't agree with their decisions or complaining about this or complaining about that, putting up with bad language. It's not right and it's not fair, but they carry on doing it year on year. We have some great staff in this council. I also want to pay tribute to our cabinet members who, frankly, work a shift with energy, knowledge and passion on their subjects. I really do mean that. They do a great job, and to suggest reducing cabinet members to me is absolute nonsense when we've got such a great team delivering far more than many local authorities do, particularly on the green agenda and the cyber park. There is some good news in the budget. You know, you look at some of the capital projects, you know, we're still able, despite all the restrictions, we're still able to invest, as Councillor Atherton said, £4.5 million in private rented sector providing social housing in our town. How desperately needed is that? We're still able to invest £80,000 in our parks. How excellent is that? And we're still able to invest in more CCTV in our town to make our town centre safer and hopefully to increase the number of prosecutions for antisocial behaviour and littering. So there's a lot to be said for this budget. I am really, really delighted to support it, and once again, thank everybody who was involved.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Mayor. I've managed to press the right button this time. Okay. It's getting quite hard to sort of take part in a debate when all these really, really positive things are being spoken about. I'll start off, I won't speak for long, but I will start off by saying there was a reference from somewhere over in that part of the chamber about a £20 million from the government for the Golden Valley development. I just want to make sure, yes, that's a fact, but I want to make sure everyone understands. This isn't a blank cheque for Cheltenham Borough Council to spend on anything they want to. In fact, the information we currently have considerably limits what that money can be spent on. And let's not forget that £20 million came from the second round of the Levelling Up Fund. Cheltenham got 0 in the first round. Perhaps somebody over there might like to have a word with our MP and find out why that was. Or would you prefer to wait to ask our next MP, Max Wilkinson, after the election? I'm not going to speak about everything that my colleague, Councillor Jeffries, has put into his speech there, but I hope we all agree that given the current awful economic climate that we find ourselves in, largely due to the Conservative government, the budget proposed by my Cabinet colleague, Councillor Jeffries, and his excellent team of officers, it's absolutely brilliant. I won't go into all that he spoke about, but I will highlight a few points about the Golden Valley development itself. Let's not forget, that's going to be more than 3,000 new low-carbon homes, including 35% which will be affordable. And that's going to help an awful lot of our more vulnerable people in the town. It's also going to create over 11,000 new jobs, not displaced jobs, not people coming in from other parts of the county and other parts of the country. That's going to be 11,000 brand new jobs with people training in industries that they probably once upon a time didn't think they'd ever get involved in. And this has been born out of collaboration with partnerships with a really internationally renowned development partner, with government agencies, with big industry, and with academia. That's to name but just a few. Given those economic pressures that I've talked about to begin with, I would urge all members to support this excellent budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Collins. Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sorry, I'm just going to say a few things. I think clarifying Councillor Horwood's point about banging the drum for planning, I think they do a wonderful job, don't get me wrong, but we're talking about conservation vacancies being recruited for and enforcement recruitment. My understanding is these are actually ongoing vacancies that are as a result of recent officers leaving. I appreciate there are some new ones as well. So that's one point I'd like to make. And another point, I know the leader mentioned, it's brilliant that the North Place planning application has now come to the planning department for validation. And my understanding is that a few years ago, this administration was given a chance to bid for a 3 million government grant to get on and do that housing application, which might have protected some of our fields in Leckhampton, because the housing supply might not have been in the dreadful state it was when, for example, the Miller application went in. I appreciate that funding never came from the government, but it was a lost opportunity. So thank goodness the North Place is now going to go ahead, I hope, and provide the much needed homes. Finally, I know you've said that the MP has not got funding for Cheltenham, but it's my understanding that there's £187 million come to this town, which wouldn't have come without him. It may be capital, but it's a mixture, and that doesn't include the A417 or Junction 9. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And in the absence of the Green Party, who do seem to be absent quite a lot as of late, I do want it to be said that there is some fantastic climate change work in this budget. It's almost a shame that they haven't asked me any questions about what the budget is being spent on or what's even in there, because my guess is as good as theirs as far as these things go, I think. But I do think it's really important for us to note not only and it is truly incredible that the finance team have managed to find a way to keep us on the same budget we had last year. There have been no cuts to our climate investment. We are still spending that money, prioritising our investment in our town and in its town's future, despite substantial shortfalls in this budget, as many of us have noted throughout this debate. I also want to note the incredible degree of flexibility and creativity that the finance team have been able to really deliver for Cheltenham, not only in being able to balance our books, but also in being able to enable the Green Deal investment scheme, which allows businesses to borrow money at a reduced rate to invest in climate adaptation in Cheltenham. It's such an exciting scheme, both in the fact that it delivers incredible investment at a very, very low cost to the taxpayer, which is our favourite kind of investment, but also it's very much one of its kind. I've been invited to multiple councils across the UK over the past few months to talk about it, because it's that exciting. And I think it must be said that not only is it exciting that Cheltenham's balanced its books, which is truly incredible under the circumstances, but that we find these innovative ways to invest in Cheltenham, to develop these schemes, to use our finances wisely, which I know all my Cabinet colleagues have been doing, but those in Cabinet will know I've been through this budget with a fine-tooth comb, particularly the climate budget, and we are spending every damn penny about as well as I think we can, and it's an incredible achievement for all of us. I hope we all support Pete's budget, because it is truly excellent.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. And then the last speaker I've got on this item is Councillor Willingham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to just comment on the requirements that seem to have come down from central government. I'll just read something out, which may well describe what happened. So the Director of Local Administration Statistics, now part of the department, presented the Minister with a plan to introduce preset failure standards on all local government plans that cost more than £10,000. The Minister is excited. This will make sure he gets a grip on local government. That's a plot line from Yes Minister. But it sounds remarkably like what we're seeing coming out of the Department for Administrative Affairs. No, sorry, the Department for, what was it? Levelling Up Housing and Communities. Is that the right one? It's a bit farcical when politics is mirroring satire, and it's not surprising that the public are losing confidence. I guess at least it's less sweary than the thick of it. The comments in the report that we've got say that they're trying to reduce wasteful spend on EDI, so Equality, Diversity and Inclusion programmes. Dog whistle politics of the right. As someone with a hidden disability, I think it's fair to speak on that. There are people here today because they can use hearing loops. That is in us doing our EDI work. There are people who can access the building, EDI work. and yet the government want to use that as a dog whistle. It really does concern me that our budget is predicated on potentially compromising our duty to the Equality Act, and to that seems to be where the government is going. You know, they want to take away some of our human rights legislation. Who's next? That is the question. So I think we will have to, as a council, follow those guidelines, otherwise we don't get the money. But it is really, really deeply concerning what is coming out of central government. And if you look back in history, strong local government delivered good services for people. You look at the industrial towns that have the huge town halls that came around after the Industrial Revolution, and things changed amazingly for people with the implementation of sanitation, if nothing, you know, the council's invested. And I don't know what the current government is scared of from having strong local government, but it really does concern me, and maybe we need to look at how local government can be strengthened to deliver what local people want in their areas. And hopefully a new government will take a different approach and look at delivering that. I'll finish there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. So I have no other speakers, so we now move to Councillor Jeffries. Oh, sorry, Councillor Hay, did you want to speak? Sorry.
I didn't indicate, Mr. Mayor, so that it didn't get confused with me speaking once, but actually this. So I'm doing the roundup. Well, goodness me, my job as seconder of this budget is to largely pick up the pieces as well of things that actually we needed to say that were good and positive about this budget. So I will be brief, but I do want to just set one piece of record straight. I mean, of course we've had government funding, Councillor Harman, which we acknowledge and we welcome. But I go back to the fact that this authority has spent 95 million on Golden Valley. The government have given us a provisional 20 million. Somebody else can do the sums on the difference in that amount. In terms of the MX, the government gave us 3.114 million. And we will have spent 10 million in total. So the gap on that is that we, Cheltenham Borough Council, have put 7 million into that project. I then look at the, we also fund our own development team to the tune of 700,000 per annum, which is a huge amount of money. So those are start figures from of what this council actually does, is that we are committed. But that doesn't mean to say that we can achieve that all on our own. So actually, the partnerships that we form and those that we work with really closely in many different ways to bring forward economy, development, but community as well. Those are really important things that we do. We can't do these things in isolation. We can't do climate change in isolation. We can't build houses in isolation. What this budget also shows is that we're growing our economy with more jobs, not just looking at Golden Valley, but in the other areas that we are working. And the idea, I mean, I'm very proud of what this small authority does in terms of its equality, diversity and inclusion. So I'm really proud of what we do. We can do more. Everybody can always do more on lots and lots of things. But I vehemently disagree that, as this government's saying, that we're wasting money. I find that quite staggering. So this budget, for me, is all about securing our future and our young people's future. Not just not the 20-year-olds, not the 35-year-olds, but the 10-year-olds of this world, my grandchildren. You know, securing their future is what we're about, and working with them. I would like to put forward my thanks to my Cabinet colleagues. As Councillor Baker said, you know, we all work extremely hard as Cabinet members. A lot of it you don't see and it goes unrecognised. as do, and that's the same applies to officers. I'm sure Councillor Jeffreys will offer his thanks, but I do want to put on record my particular thanks to him for the amount of work and commitment that he puts into his role. Thank you, Mayor.
Sorry, thank you, Councillor Hay. As seconder, apologies for not coming to you then. Councillor Jeffreys then, as the proposer.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Firstly, members, thank you for your input in terms of questions and input into the debate. I want to put on record my thanks also to the members of the public who responded to the consultation. I didn't mention it in my introduction to the speech. I thought I'd use an opportunity now in the roundup to thank them. Those contributions are always welcomed. I don't know where to start really, because there's so many dog whistles, so much negativity, and so much horribleness which is going on in terms of politics right now at a national level, because this country is being let down by this government. So I'm not going to focus on that, because I could talk all night about that. I really could. I could talk all night. I want to focus on our town, our people, okay? And that's the whole purpose of this budget, the whole purpose of this council. Like Councillor Baker says, what we do up and down the country. But everything that makes this town unique stems from its people, stems from its residents, from east to west, north to south, every one of them. All of those people, whether they be millionaires or paupers, we all make up this town. And this budget, well, I don't know where it came from, this budget secures that future. Again, the challenges we've had to face, we've managed to overcome. And it's because we can see that investment into our future, or for our young people's futures, into Golden Valley, that we're motoring on. We cannot sustain another financial shock as big as the one we had a couple of years ago, and we're going to struggle, I think, if we have a couple more. But this town sets the platform again to maintain this town, to maintain the budget of this council and what it delivers across the town. It is about investing in our people and in our town. Now, considering that national economic uncertainty, we're going to have to review and monitor this budget. Nothing changes effectively for the finance team. They work in day out. I'd like to put on record my thanks to not only all the officers of the council, because they work in this continually, but the finance team. Constantly working. We're going to walk out of here and go home, and Monday morning, Gemma, I'm sure, will crack open a laptop and they'll be beavering away on the savings, or beavering away on something positive for us. But yeah, I will put on record my personal thanks to Paul, Gemma and John. Your depth of knowledge, professional advice and guidance has been exceptional once again this year, and I am truly grateful to become member of finance to have that support behind me. Like I say, my thanks to all members across the chamber for engaging with the budget in various forms. My thanks to the leader and cabinet colleagues and my group. I couldn't do without my group. Their challenge, input and collective ongoing support is exemplary. As I mentioned during my opening statement, this Liberal Democratic administration's political choices are clear. They run throughout the DNA of these budget papers. Our priorities are about supporting our residents, investing in our town, putting Cheltenham first. I commend it to you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffreys. So with that, we will move to the vote. This will be a recorded vote, though for our purposes, it's exactly the same process as normal. Okay, thank you, members. That is passed with 25 votes in favour and 4 abstentions. We now move then on to item 10. This is the Housing Revenue Account revised forecast for 23-24 and the budget for 24-25. And we go back to Councillor Jeffreys as Cabinet Member for Finance and Assets.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Colleagues, the HRA budget. The economic challenge I've just outlined in the General Fund, I'm not going to repeat, but they do continue to put financial pressure on our housing revenue account. However, I am pleased to report that with the confirmation of the National Rent Policy for 24-25, along with that small reduction in interest rates for the peak of 2022, the long-term position of the HRA starts to show signs of improvement. Sadly, however, the short-term policy approach from this current government towards local authority housing continues. In my view, is what perpetuates the ongoing housing crisis. 1 year of certainty needs to change, We need longer-term funding plans and rent policy. The government cannot fix the housing crisis with a snappy headline or, I think, 16 ministers in 14 years. That's a bit laughable, really, when you think about it. I was trying to find a suitable, light-hearted analogy to insert into this introduction to this paper at this point, but it is serious. The growing homelessness crisis and lack of affordable and social housing need long-term commitments, policy certainty and sensible funding solutions. I can only surmise that the continued Conservative government failure in this area is because they don't get it or don't want to get it. And this Council's housing services are one of the core elements that we as a Council provide. And last October we set a clear direction of travel to bring housing services back in-house. As an administration, we've never shied away from decisions that we believe are in the best interests of all of our communities. As ever, this administration sets a bold vision which delivers savings to retain our financial resilience, but also the opportunity to deliver services better and be better placed to respond to whatever additional regulations or compliance regime this government wants to introduce. When I presented the budget last year, we committed to continue to grow the HRA, support our tenants, invest in new and existing homes for the benefit of our residents and communities, despite the challenges we face, and I believe that's proven to be the right approach. So I'm pleased to present the HRA interim budget proposal for 24-25, delivering on our ambition to provide housing services that places residents at the centre of decision-making, delivers high-quality new homes, reinvests in existing homes and neighbourhoods, delivers value for money, but continues to support the most vulnerable and those in financial hardship in our communities. Now, at this point, before we get into the debate and questions, I'd like to put on record my thanks to all the staff at Cheltenham Borough Homes and the officers within the Council. Your hard work on behalf of our communities is recognised and valued. Thank you. Colleagues, the HRA budget for 2024-2025 enables us to continue to support our tenants, invest in their homes, deliver some new homes, and keeps putting Cheltenham first. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffries. So, firstly, we have any questions on this item? Councillor Harman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank the Cabinet Member. Again, I add my thanks to all the staff at CBH as well as the others that have contributed. It's just a simple question. Can the Cabinet Member confirm if the costs of bringing CBH back in-house are met from CBH reserves, or does it have any impact on the paper before us?
Yes. You said CBH reserves. I said yes. That's correct, Councillor Harman. Thank you.
Okay, we don't have any other questions. So, do we have any members wishing to speak on debate on this item? Councillor Atherstone.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say a huge thank you to all colleague officers from across both CBC and CBH for their outstanding work over the past 12 months. I know firsthand how hard everyone works, and I also know the increase in demand for additional housing services. It's really upsetting when you come across so many people that are being forced out of their homes and their opportunities for finding somewhere else to live seem extremely limited. So with our budget, I'm really, really pleased that as a council, we're able to continue to invest in building our own homes and investing in homes that are built by other developers through Section 106 acquisitions. It's worth noting that over the next 4 years, we have a really strong pipeline of 390 affordable new homes. And actually, these are not going to be any affordable new homes. These are going to be high-quality, sustainable, energy-efficient homes, which, and we've already got evidence of such homes being built. We've got 9 in Leckhampton, working with a developer through Section 1 agreement. We have 9 new affordable net zero homes there, which is really, really exciting. Our own land-led projects, which this budget is enabling, include the development at 320 Swindon Road and also the former Monks Cross School site. That's 24 homes and 70 homes. Both of these projects are moving forward, so we're looking to see homes to be lived in the next couple of years, which is really, really great news. When you read through the budget report, it's just incredible to see the number of services, housing services provided to residents across the town. And I know how valuable to all communities, how valuable those services are. It's also really great that in terms of our investments into people's existing homes, existing housing stock, that we are informed by our asset management strategy. And this is a data-driven document, and it identifies that actually we are mindful that we're going to be continuing to collect good data to inform investments going forward. It's great. In the next 5 years, we're rolling out a brand new kitchens for every household. So I believe there's 500 planned for this upcoming financial year, and then 1,000 more homes over the next 4 years. We've already seen vast investments, and we continue to invest in fire and electrical safety measures and mould and damp and condensation conditions. These are really, really key investments, and obviously also we're working towards the new standards with regards to the social housing regulator and the housing ombudsman. So overall, as Councillor Jeffries mentioned, we are in a stronger position than last year. And, it is looking brighter this year, but it is a modest recovery. And we do need to be careful, which is why, being able to streamline services, our housing services, by bringing CBH back in house to CBC, we're able to reduce duplicates, systems or services, and be able to add value to a broad array or a broader range of residents, both tenants, leaseholders, shared ownership owners, and private rented sector.
Sorry, Councillor Atherton, could you just conclude?
My apologies. Yeah, so I just want to say I fully support this budget, and to thank the finance team and Councillor Jeffries for all their hard work.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Atherton. Do we have any other speakers on this item? Yeah, sorry, Councillor Baker.
We have huge disparities of wealth in our town, as we know, huge. So it's great to hear about all the investment which is going into our existing council stock, as the Cabinet member has outlined. That is great to see. And it's really exciting, actually, that we are one of the first authorities, I think, to resume the building of council houses. And that, what a huge thing. I think that's probably one of the biggest feathers in our cap, that we've done that. And that we're continuing to do that in really challenging circumstances. And I think bringing CBH, who have done a great job, but bringing CBH back in-house and having someone like Paul Minnis to be looking after the development of new homes, I'm really excited that we will see significant delivery of more council housing in the years ahead. And it's also important that with all this new building, we are demanding from developers a 35 or 40% share of affordable homes, however you define affordable. But that is going to be one of the serious ways that we're able to actually deliver more and more affordable housing. And there are huge disparities in people's abilities. We have a lot of mental health issues across our country, increasingly so. More and more children now suffer with mental illness. And more those children become adults with ongoing mental issues. And I think when we are looking at addressing our housing issues, we need to be aware and need to make special provision for housing for people with mental disabilities where support is needed. And I hope that will be taken on board.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. So now we move to Councillor Jeffries to sum up.
Thank you. I'm sure, Councillor Baker, that Councillor Atherton's heard your point there about mental illness, and she'll undoubtedly take that on board. Colleagues, thank you once again for listening to me drone on about housing. it's a particular passion of mine because was homeless briefly in my life. Home is where the heart is. We're all going to leave here and go back to our families and loved ones. So our housing revenue account is very important to doing what we can to improving people's lives. And I'm particularly keen on the investment, as you'll all be aware. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, for finishing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffries. In that case, we'll move to the vote. This, again, will be a recorded vote, but again, it's use the system as usual. Okay, thank you, members. That is unanimous. I'm just mindful of time. If we take one more item and then we'll take a short break. Item 11 is the council tax resolution for 24-25. Councillor Jeffries, over to you again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Colleagues, now our budget has been agreed. This paper is required to formally approve the total council tax for the residents of Cheltenham for the ensuing year. This includes the council tax requirements of the County Council, the police, and where relevant, the parishes. I commend the report to Council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffries. Do we have any questions on this item? And if not, we'll move to the debate. Do we have anyone wishing to speak? No? In that case, Councillor Jeffries, back to you.
I commend the report to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffries. So once again, a recorded vote, but please vote as usual. Okay, thank you, members. That's unanimous. Clearly mentioning that we're about to have a break sped things along a bit there. As I said, we were going to take a break. We will now take a break. If we can say 15 minutes, so back in here for, say, 22, if that's okay. Thank you, members. Thank you, members. Okay, so we are now on item 12 of the agenda. So this is the council tax discount scheme for care leavers. Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Mayor. Colleagues, this report recommends some changes to our existing care leavers council tax discount scheme. These changes are recommendations that were made after review during the last year of Gloucestershire's offer to care leavers by the Department of Education's National Advisor for Care Leavers. Currently, there is a common policy across districts, so these recommendations would then form an extension of this policy if colleagues are supportive. The proposed changes are that from the April 2024, care leavers up to the date of their 25th birthday will be eligible. This was previously 22. Also, it is proposed to include care leavers who were previously in the care of the other local authorities, as well as those previously in the care of Gloucester County Council. All 6 districts are recommending that the care leavers discount scheme is amended from April 2024 to include these changes. Now, I know firsthand from experience that care leavers are a particularly vulnerable group, and some of those vulnerabilities are referenced in the report. So it gives me great pleasure, Mr. Mayor, in bringing the report here today. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions, colleagues.
Okay, councillors, so any questions on this item? And if not, any members wishing to speak on this item? Sorry, Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mayor. I think this is just another example of where this council takes a big-hearted approach. Of course, we're one of the few that still offers the council tax support scheme with cross-party support every year. And when these are divisive times, and we don't always agree with each other on everything, but actually one of the things that we all do congregate around is this sort of thing where we can provide a bit of extra support. So I think this is just another example of something that we can all be proud of, because it does show that Cheltenham as a town is a place with a big heart that looks after its most vulnerable people, alongside some of those schemes that we could have mentioned in the budget to do with health and well-being and the way that we look after food bank users as well, making sure that they have access to some extra things that are nice to have that they might not otherwise be able to afford. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Councillor Harman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, you will have cross-party support from this party once again, because this is a good thing. And wearing my county hat, I've met a number of care leavers, and they have some big challenges, and we should do all we can to support them. And some of them now going on to be very successful if they're just given that chance. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other members indicating to speak. So, Councillor Jeffries, back to you on this one.
Thank you, Mayor. No, as Councillor Wilkinson said, this is one of those times where I can actually be sort of supportive of Conservatives, because across the county, across districts, they have worked collaboratively on this. It's a non-political issue, this one for me. It just seems very sensible in supporting those most vulnerable. So your comments are most welcome, Councillor Harman. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson, for your comments too. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, members, we'll now move to the vote on this item. So please use the pads. Thank you, members. That is 26 votes in favour with 1 abstention. Now we're on to item 13. Councillor Jeffries, it's back to you, but this is now on the council tax premium on empty properties and second homes. Oh, sorry, we just wait for Councillor Horwood.
Thank you, Mayor. I think this is the last one for me, so we'll be done with me after this, I think, hopefully. Council tax premium on empty homes and second properties. Colleagues, with the continued housing crisis, this administration uses the tools at its disposal to do what it can to bring empty homes back into use. Utilising our discretionary power to levy council tax on long-term empty properties is one such tool. The level of premium and current number of properties is shown at 2.3 in the report. Now, changes to the relevant Acts of Parliament that have taken place means that we can now, if colleagues are supportive of the recommendations in the report, we can now charge this premium after a property is empty for 1 year instead of 2. There are also new powers afforded to us through these changes in that we can now charge a premium for second homes. Sadly, there has been a loophole in the legislation for far too long. If a long-term empty home is furnished, it can be classed as a second home, thus circumnavigating the empty homes premium. Currently, there are 963 properties classed as second homes, and whilst fully accepting that the majority of these are not long-term empty, the changes in the legislation are welcome in my view, and we should encourage all owners of second homes to consider freeing them up. Taking this decision now means that we will be prepared and able to be proactive when the change is taken into effect in April 2025. We have to do them now for them to take effect then. Now, empty homes and second homes, in my view, do not positively contribute to our community cohesion across the town. So I'm pleased to present this report with the recommendations as they're laid out. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you again, Councillor Jeffries. So, as usual, any questions on this one? And also, Councillor Baker.
How does the council recognise properties which have been empty for more than a year?
I'm going to take a flyer on this, Councillor Baker, and suggest they don't pay the council tax. So I suppose the first time it gets flagged will be that. Generally, we'll get notifications when people move out of properties, but as soon as the council tax stops paying, then obviously the team will see that missing payment and then make some inquiries in due course. I'm just looking for the official officer answer, so we may be a bit more eligible.
Any other questions? No? In that case, we move on to the debate. Anyone wishing to speak? Councillor Atherstone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to say this report has my full support and that it's quite an eye-opener seeing the number of empty properties we have across the town. And just to note that those that have been empty for more than 2 years currently stands at 143 properties, and those that have been empty for more than 5 years currently stands at 42 properties. So I would like to think that not all of these homes are just standing empty idly and that they could actually be back brought into good use. So I'm really pleased that this new policy coming into effect next year could help to encourage those. Perhaps we can bring these homes back into use, much needed for other residents in Cheltenham.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Atherstone. I don't see any other members indicating to speak, so Councillor Jeffries, did you want to come back on anything?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, it's not a big-ish problem in Cheltenham, but it is a problem, no doubt. Just want to put on record my thanks to the team that sits behind there in the council offices. We do a fantastic amount of work. The council tax team, benefits to vice team. Yes, thank you, Jane, and your team for all the hard work you do on our behalf and on behalf of our residents. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffries. We now move to the vote. Okay, thank you, members. That is unanimous. Okay, item 14 then. And so, Councillor Jeffries, you're off the hook for this one. So I'm now going to invite the Chief Executive, Gareth Edmondson, to introduce the report on the Council Order of Precedence and nomination for Mayor-elect.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the regular report that you receive as per the Constitution that is merely looking to confirm the order of precedence for the nominations and elections of Mayor. You'll see Councillor Baker is put forward subject to the elections in May, and the official appointment of Mayor, Deputy Mayor is obviously made post that election, but this is just to confirm the order of precedent. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, members, so as usual, do we have any questions on this item? And if not, do we have any members wishing to speak? And if not, then we move to the... oh, sorry, no, I should go back to our Chief Executive in case he wishes to say anything, which he doesn't. And therefore, we go to the vote. Okay, thank you, members. That is unanimous. Right, item 15. Item 15, this is the council diary, and for this one we go to the leader, Councillor Hay, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Mayor. Introduction will be very short and brief. We've all been consulted on the diary and had opportunity. Again, this is an annual one that comes forward. It's always a challenge to accommodate all of the meetings at a time that works for everybody. And our officers work extremely hard to make sure that we avoid as many high days and holidays, as it were. But inevitably there will be some where it conflicts with members' commitments. And I'd like to just say thank you, big thank you to Bev and her team for pulling this together. Because it's not an easy task. Lots of member briefings, lots of meetings, council meetings, committee meetings, working group meetings, advisory groups. There's an awful lot. So unless I'm happy to take any questions, Mayor, but it is what it is.
Thank you, Councillor Hay. With that, I will open it to any questions. Councillor Seacombe.
It might seem obvious, and I'm sure in your researches you have done this, but it came up this year just gone. Were the party conferences taken into consideration? They were, right.
Okay, I don't see any other members indicating any questions. So do we have any members wishing to speak on the item? No. In which case, Councillor Hay, do you have anything further? No. We move to the vote. Okay, thank you, members. That is unanimous. Right, so item 16 is notices of motion, and there are none. Item 17, any other item the Mayor determines as urgent. There is nothing on that. So that moves us on to item 18, which is to read out the Local Government Act 1972 exempt information for the following items. So please bear with me whilst I read this out. That in accordance with section 100A, part 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the remaining agenda items, as it is likely that, in the view of the nature of the business to be transacted or the nature of the proceedings, if members of the public are present, there will be disclosed to them exempt information as defined in paragraphs 1, 2 and 3 of Part 1, Schedule 12A, Local Government Act 1972. Namely, paragraph 1, information relating to any individual, paragraph 2, information which is likely to reveal the identity of an individual, and paragraph 3, information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information. So can we have a vote on that item? Well, show of hands, I think I should say, sorry. Everyone is in favour of that. Thank you, members. That's